Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to futurist, IT architect, and free software advocate Arjen Kamphuis. Arjen, welcome back to the Keiser Report.
Great to be here again.
Tinfoil is the new black.
Yeah.
Explain.
So we had a presentation by Jake Applebaum.
Where?
This was in Hamburg at the CCC conference.
CCC is the Chaos Computer Club.
German Chaos Computer Club, oldest, biggest computer hacker club in the world. They had their yearly congress. 9,000 people attended, which was all-time new record.
I went a few years ago, and there was maybe less than 1,000. Now, Jacob Applebaum, just for folks to give him a little background, who is he?
He is one of the key people behind the Tor technology that allows you to browse with safety, amongst other things, and one of the most effective digital civil liberties activist right now in the world, living in Berlin, no longer wants to live in the US. And he did a presentation on one of the more recent sort of NSA documents that have come out that shows that the kind of technologies that are now used for targeted access, so not just the sweeping up your Gmail, but really going after your individual laptop, they have a sort of this whole science fiction aspect to them where directed microwave pointed at laptops to then influence those machines from several miles away.
Okay, so tinfoil is the new black. So in other words, the old, as recently as just a few months ago, if you describe what you just described, you would be condemned as part of the tinfoil hat-wearing crowd.
You would have been called crazy. And now we have internal NSA documents that tell us that actually that's what they do, and they're quite proud of it.
And they can point at a laptop and just suck everything out of it.
Yeah, they can manipulate, influence a laptop, or read its data from sometimes even miles away by directing microwave energy at either the laptop or the person operating the laptop.
All right, so let's continue here. So could global surveillance system, could it work without the complicity of Microsoft and Yahoo in providing these intentionally shoddy software and backdoors? In other words, we've seen over the past few years the revelations, again, from the Snowden revelations, that Microsoft and Yahoo, they actually compromise their own technology to give the easy access, backdoor access for the NSA. Without their cooperation, would we see the level of surveillance invasiveness that we see?
It would be a lot harder and a lot more expensive if they had to go after every individual well-secured system. If most of the computers in the world are already leaky by default when they come out of the box, then of course the NSA doesn't individually have to hack them and use the kind of advanced technologies that Jake showed last month. So that's really for extreme cases where people use high secure systems. Most of the systems, when you take them out of the box, are already leaky thanks to companies like Microsoft. I would suspect actually that by agreeing to work with the US government in that way, a company like Microsoft would get very lenient attitude towards them when they are, say, a convicted monopolist. So it works.
Twice convicted.
Well, multiple convicted.
Multiple convicted predatory monopolists.
Exactly. But they keep getting away with it, and you have to wonder why. And through Snowden, we may have stumbled on a reason.
Is this about safety or about corporations just trying to get information for competitive advantage or for marketing purposes?
I haven't seen any evidence that this has helped make anything or anyone safer. And I've been speaking to a lot of intelligence whistleblowers, so these are former spooks basically, and they all say this is not how you catch terrorists or catch evil people, but it works really well for industrial espionage, and it works really well for infiltrating activist groups, whether it's an environmental activist or a human rights activist. So it's really good for democratic repression, basically, of those kinds of groups.
Yeah, I have a question that I've heard anecdotally from different sources, maybe you can shed some light on this, that the payoffs to these corporations from the government to make it less obvious that they're just paying them off, to hide the accounting of the payoffs, they're engaged to some degree in click fraud. So in other words, if the NSA got a backdoor into Yahoo or these other companies, they are generating billions of click fraud clicks, which of course generate ad revenue for Yahoo, and then their company is based on a multiple of that revenue and profit based on ad revenue. But is it true what my source is telling me that there's a significant portion of revenue is generated by government click fraud?
I haven't seen that document, but that would be a wonderful way for the US government to reward companies that are willing to help them. I mean, there are obviously all kinds of other ways, such as not convicting them as a monopolist or not give them the super duper IRS audit. So there's lots of ways that companies could be remunerated, but this could be one of them,
Google says they were unaware that the NSA had broken into their systems. Do you believe him?
It's possible that there are people within Google who didn't know.
Is it possible that Google's stock price as a multiple of revenue is in fact the product of this quid pro quo between the government exchanging click fraud for information?
It certainly helps the US government that a US company is so dominant in this field. So the US government, by maybe helping Google to become dominant, creates a situation where they control the company that is most dominant in that field. So they certainly have an interest, that's obvious, yeah.
Okay, so it's a symbiotic relationship. In other words, without the surveillance that you've said and many others have made no one safer, the revenues for these huge companies would be cut in half potentially or more, and the stock prices would crash. But of course, they all have interest. And of course, in Congress, it's legal for senators and congressmen to own shares in these companies.
Yes.
So they're making money from the bastardization of the democratic process in America through click fraud, through surveillance, and through propaganda. Let's talk about Yahoo's CEO. She said that for her not to cooperate with the NSA was treasonous. Your thoughts?
Well, it might land her in legal difficulty. So, you know, in some legal term under the Patriot Act, she may be technically correct. Although, of course, she could have done a lot of other things over the last year, such as speaking up about it and maybe taking a pay cut or something. But apparently, she thought that another choice would have been better.
Okay, you're Dutch.
Yep.
Okay, but so you're not American. In America, they have the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
And looking at those documents, one would think that a statement like this from Yahoo's CEO would indicate just the opposite, that to cooperate with an entity that is compromising the democratic principles of the population, that would be treasonous. She has committed treason overtly. And now you're Dutch, and you're not American, but from your observation, I point this out, that you're not American, but from the outside observing it, would you argue with my interpretation here?
No, sure. So if you say that the Constitution and the spirit of the Constitution is the highest law of the land, then clearly it's a treasonous act. But if you say, look, I know from a practical standpoint as a CEO of a company that if I don't play ball with the NSA, they're going to do all these terrible things to me and to my company under the Patriot Act, and so I'm just going to, you know, go along to get along. I could understand how people would do it. I mean, I don't approve. I think it's a really bad choice, and I think, you know, later when you look back on it, I think many of these CEOs will regret it that they were part of the problem instead of being part of the solution. But I think that CEOs who don't cooperate will be pressured maybe into bankruptcy by the very same government.
Sure, but in the old days, we would call those people traitors. And they would be executed.
Yeah, but
we
now
don't have that kind of fortitude anymore. America's become a fat, lazy, donut-eating, chomping, no good neck. All right, let's move on. Tell us about Turmoil and Turbine and why anyone with dignity and self-respect would want to hide, I guess, is part of this question. But tell us about Turmoil and Turbine.
So I don't even know all the details of those programs, but these are systems that are analyzing in real time stuff that people do on the internet. Whether it's social media or maybe even systems outside the US. So it's this very multi-layered system of analyzing everybody's move online all the time.
Okay, so we heard about last year Prism.
Yes.
And then we heard about, no, this is another one of these types of programs.
So they have, well, that we now know of dozens, and we've only seen a fraction of the Snowden documents, so there's much more to come.
What's going on in the Netherlands? Okay, the Netherlands is
remarkably little. In fact, I think there's been now one letter from the government to the parliament that basically says we have taken note of this situation. We are following the matter with interest, and if there's anything else, you'll be informed. So there is right now there is no policy position of the Dutch government on the fact that all its citizens are being monitored all the time, which is quite worrying. Yeah,
well, it's worrying, and it seems a bit unusual in that the Netherlands has a reputation for being progressive and for civil rights, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So here's a clear violation of those rights.
Yeah,
so
very clear.
What is it, and now recently in the last few years, you know, the politics has gone right in the Netherlands. Is this part of that move? And is there a movement, are you aware of a movement in the Netherlands right now that can effectively push back against what appears to be a supine government who's being rolled over by American intelligence agencies?
I think the political pressure out of the US on the Dutch government is very forceful. and very effective apparently, because yeah, they do completely roll over, and our media system essentially is part of that problem and acquiesces into not having the debate. So
Amsterdam is the European headquarters for corporations like
Google and all the
Microsoft.
Yeah, Microsoft. Oh yeah, no, they
Right.
all
So
they
they
run their accounting fraud through Amsterdam.
And they run the accounting fraud through Amsterdam, through the intellectual property accounting fraud, where there's Bono over there at U2, or the other intellectual
they're all
property.
Dutch foundations.
The Dutch sandwich runs through Amsterdam.
Yes, yes.
Or it's the Irish sandwich that runs through Amsterdam, but it's some kind of sandwich.
Yeah.
It's a threesome. It's an unholy threesome of some type.
It's something very naughty, yeah.
All right, so we got about 2 minutes left. I want to return to the Computer Chaos Club, which every year they have this get-together.
Yep.
It's been growing.
Yep.
I think Glenn Greenwald actually did a keynote speak this year. I know the folks behind the CCC pretty well, and how important is CCC going forward? But I guess the more question is, what other tidbits of interesting came out of the conference? Because I missed it this year. What are a couple of highlights?
Most of the really interesting talks, in my opinion, were really about detailing everything we now know, thanks to the Snowden revelations, and really analyzing it. And then there were people who actually, literally, were physically going around the planet, photographing and documenting all kinds of black sites and trying to get information. I think the single thing that I missed, at least, is really having a good discussion with these 9,000 smart people. Is sort of, now what do we do? When
Angela Merkel compared NSA to the Stasi recently, did that resonate in Germany?
Oh yeah, no. In Germany there is much more resistance to this. So in Germany you now have informal gatherings, crypto parties in most major cities once a month or every weekend.
Last question. We only got 30 seconds.
Right.
Bitcoin, will it be immune from the NSA scoundrels?
I don't know. I think there's probably a whole bunch of very clever people making sure it doesn't undermine the dollar, because we all know what happened to Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi when they undermined the dollar or tried to. And so Bitcoin,
on the technological front, though, your instincts are that it will survive an NSA onslaught, or is it just too early to say?
It's too early. It's possible that somebody will find a leak in the crypto, but it looks very solid up to now.
Fair enough. Okay, thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
Great to be here.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Arjen Kamphuis. If you'd like to get in touch, tweet us at Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.